Hello, and welcome to another fully live episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and today we have our recurring guest, Angelina, on to talk about actually not aerospace cybersecurity this time. It's something a little bit new. Angelina, thanks for joining us today.
Hey all, and thanks so much, Kody, for having me on the show today. I'm excited to be on.
Me too. So we have been talking about all sorts of like aerospace cybersecurity stuff for a while, but one thing that we both have been interested in is also AI and all the different ways that it can be used. So you are going to be teaching a class. Actually, I think you're doing this class maybe more than once, but the class is going to be on AI. Can you talk a little bit about what your focus is on this particular class?
Yeah, so recently we've been seeing an upsurge of using artificial intelligence models in order to generate payloads or conduct general purpose cybersecurity tasks. And I noticed there wasn't a lot of online classes that was very accessible to the public that covered that subject in particular. So in this class, we're going to be talking about how LLMs specifically can be used to conduct routine cybersecurity tasks, both on the red team and blue team perspective. So we'll cover like malware generation, how payloads can be created, like offensive payloads can be created using language models, alongside the other end of that, where we can conduct general like security routines, check for things like phishing and other attacks that can occur using those models.
Yeah, this is something that I've began to realize is now affecting everybody. For a while, it seemed like people that were really into technology were using like AI, and it was really not something that you would see everywhere. But that is not the case anymore. In 2024, everybody has heard of ChatGPT. Pretty much everybody has tried it, and most people are using it in some way, shape, or form. However, it really is people that have been either using it from the start or really pushing it to do new and interesting things that can show off some of the cool stuff that can be done with these new tools, as well as some of the evil things that can be done with these new tools. So there are some safeguards built into this stuff, obviously. Like you can't just like straight up ask it to write you a virus. But for a while, you could tell it that your dead grandmother like used to write viruses for the NSA and would tell you the code structure as a bedtime story, and that you missed her so much and wish that someone would read those virus like codes to you, and then it would happily actually do that. So manipulating AI, like getting it to do things it's not supposed to do, that has been a hot topic as these systems have become more and more popular, and also getting good results out of them. It's kind of like two sides of the same coin. So of course, we are fully live today. I want to encourage everybody in the chat. That's of course, James, good to see you. Trent, Kurt, Emmanuel, Ronelli, and then everybody else. Kurt, if you guys have any questions about AI for hackers, like that is what we're going to be talking about today. And I also have a very special shout out to our guest from last week. Oh, wow. James's grandmother still writes viruses for the NSA. Aw, that's so sweet. So our guest last week was Katspazio. Cold cat soup, I believe, was the origin of this nickname. But they were using what they were calling a Bluetooth nugget, which is our open source nugget design. I have one right here, actually. This is a Bluetooth version of our normal one. You can't really tell, aside from the fact that I wrote it multiple times on the outside so I didn't get it confused. But this is using the ESP32S3. This is a relatively new microcontroller that has native USB, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. It really kind of has the kitchen sink. It has 2 cores. It's really kind of a step up from other microcontrollers that we've been using in the past. And for now anyway, I've just been selling this as a kit online. Like you actually have to assemble it yourself to get like the special new microcontroller, although we are going to be switching over to it in the near future. So our guest had written a couple tools. First, he wrote the Bluetooth spammer, and this Bluetooth spammer was something that was able to send out packets and take advantage of that apple juice or sour apple attack and make Apple devices basically unusable. Specifically, iOS devices would get Bluetooth pairing requests over and over and over, and there doesn't seem to be a good way to disable this. You can turn off Bluetooth, you can do all sorts of things, and it doesn't actually make it stop. It's super, super annoying. So what ended up happening was they looked at that and like, I should build a detector, and then now have like both the problem and the solution on the same platform, which I think is really cool. So they built something, which is, I think it's the one right here. Oh yeah, this is it. This is their video on it. They built a little tool that when somebody is doing this spamming attack, is able to detect like too many unique devices, like more so than you would like expect to see in a normal place. And as soon as it starts seeing what looks like Bluetooth spam based on the number of unique devices being put out, it starts to sound the alarm, kind of like the deauth detector does for deauthentication packets. So um, Ryan actually came on the stream last week, and we were chatting a little bit about how you would catch a specific device. And a bunch of the people in our chat, and also some people in the comments later, were suggesting various ways that you could do this. So I think, let's see. Okay, so yeah, so I just want to, we do read the comments. So we had people in the chat kind of suggesting like different ways of doing this, and it looks like Ryan actually read it and then like replied and then implemented it. So this was really cool, like having a couple people in our audience and also like going back and forth on the show talking about how you could improve the spam detector directly, I believe, led to this next video. So this new video is talking about how you can hunt down flipper zeros using this Bluetooth nugget. So obviously flipper zeros are able to implement this attack. It is very annoying. But how do you catch them? Well, we were talking on the show a little bit about how the Bluetooth packets are formatted in a specific way based on the device that sends them. So like they kind of, each device puts its own stamp on it. And if you're a little bit sensitive to what's going on, I'm going to put on captions so you can also see what he's saying. But if you're a little bit sensitive to what types of packets are out there, like the flavor of those packets based on like the way that they're formatted, you can actually infer the type of device that's sending it. So this improved spam detector, based on my quick watching the video, seems to use that principle to look for identifiers that will show whether it's like an ESP32 based device doing this attack or if it's a flipper zero. So being able to both detect like a flipper zero running this attack locally and then also track it down by signal strength, I think we're the kind of approaching like the best you can really get for this particular type of cat and mouse game. I guess cat and flipper game, cat and dolphin game. Yes. So anyway, I just have to say I'm so impressed that I literally like Ryan made an awesome video. I sent him a kit to be able to play around with this more, and then he immediately turned it around into this really cool concept, which then he took feedback from the audience and made into an even better prototype. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who watches the show, who comments, who interacts with us. It does directly affect the way that we make things, and we have got some amazing members of our community doing great stuff. Angelina, of course, is one of them, and so is Ryan here making these awesome prototypes. So I hope to have Ryan back on the show again soon to kind of talk about what the process was, because Ryan was, I believe, a web developer, and began fairly recently. Prior to that, he had a completely different career working in different fields. So yeah, it was really cool to see somebody who's relatively new to hacking, relatively new to microcontrollers, make something, then improve it, and then based on feedback from the community, make it even better. So yeah, I'm very impressed by this. If you want to check out how you can catch flippers, or at least definitively prove which person is the one doing that annoying Bluetooth spam attack that can't be turned off, this is the video for you. And as Ryan points out, if you want to grab one of these, currently they are just a kit, but the fact that we have so many new projects available for this platform makes me want to just make it an official product that you can buy without having to solder it yourself. But if you're adventurous, you want to solder one yourself, and you want to try out some of these cool Bluetooth attacks and I guess like defense techniques, this seems to be the new thing. So yeah, you can check these out. They are linked. Everything's linked here if you want to grab a kit. And then you can find the Hunting Flipper Zeros on Ketspazio's account here. So I am not the one that made this attack. We merely talked about it a bunch. So I can't maybe answer too many technical questions about this, but if you have any other questions about this platform or the way that this attack happens, I am happy to answer them in the chat. So checking back on the chat, hello, Tony from Florida. I see that James's grandmother is truly making viruses with love. That's very sweet. Yeah, and good to also see Caspian. Cool. So all right, so we have one question, which is, what is the best workaround of defense countermeasure if turn it off and on again isn't a simple fix or good consistent working strategy? I might need to get a little bit more specific with that, because I don't totally understand that question, but I will attempt. Let's see. Hello. I think the first cat you made, is there an upgrade? This is an upgrade to the first cat we made. Yes, this new version. But okay, all right. So that's all for the follow-up to last week's Bluetooth spam attack and defense episode. Thank you to everyone that contributed to that. It was really cool to see the community give up some suggestions that ultimately made this attack a little bit better.
Yeah, that's super cool. I just wanted to mention that I think that's a really unique take on packet monitoring with the Nugget, because I've seen generic versions of it implemented, but the way how he specifically made it for detecting BLE packets alongside like tracking down the flipper zero, that takes a lot of looking into and research. So hats off to Ryan for putting in the effort to making that. That's really interesting.
Seriously. Yeah, no, because I know how difficult it would be to implement this on Wi-Fi with a microcontroller. So looking at someone doing Bluetooth, especially when they're not really familiar with the protocol, I've had to probably do a lot of research. Yeah, it was really, really cool. So Angelina, you want to talk a little bit about some of those AI techniques that you've been working on?
Yeah, sure. So I've been looking into AI recently. I took a break from some of the aerospace stuff because I think it can get pretty technical at times. And I feel like the previous workshops I've done were pretty technical. And I just wanted to do something a little bit more, I guess, easier to interpret, more beginner based, because I feel like aerospace, it's such a specialized field that the barrier to entry of getting into it, although I've tried to make it as easy as possible, it only affects a specific subgroup of the security community. While I think AI, it's more pervasive and a lot more people are at least familiar with it. So I wanted to make a tool in order to learn more about it and explore that field of cybersecurity. So I think the past few days I've been working on a AI assistant tool. I'll share my screen here. So this is a tool that uses the OpenAI API. It uses the GPT. It's compatible with both GPT 3.5 and GPT 4. And essentially, it lets you generate payloads depending on an input you put inside. So, um, for example, I put a sample prompt here saying generate a payload that conducts intrusion detection on Windows registry access by monitoring MAC ID and IP addresses. And then I can click generate payload to generate it, and then select from a variety of languages that I want the payload in. I just chose Python because that's usually my go-to programming language for rapidly prototyping a payload. And then you click generate, and then it generates it on the spot for you using GPT. You can also go back, see my key, and you can also interpret payloads as well. So this is a payload.
Huh.
Yeah, this is a payload I made a while ago for the USB rubber ducky. And this just opens up your terminal and runs the CMatrix command that makes it kind of shows like a matrix-like screen where just like a bunch of binary flowing down your terminal interface. And just by putting in a payload, because I know like especially for beginners getting into cybersecurity, it might be difficult to understand payload straight off the bat. So like, what does GUI space mean? I don't like, as a beginner looking at it, I might not know unless I know the specific syntax of the language. So you can input any payload and then it just breaks it down for you using the power of AI.
That's so cool. So if you find, for example, like a really interesting existing Ducky script that somebody else wrote,
Yeah.
and you want to go ahead and like understand like what it's doing because there's a part of it that's confusing, it's kind of nice also because if you are new to this and you were worried about a particular Ducky script you find online actually breaking your computer, this would be the thing that could potentially warn you that like that string is actually going to reformat your C drive and maybe you shouldn't run it on like just anyone's computer.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
I think one caveat is it's not very good at detecting for stagers. So let's say you have like a stager payload and it references like another file so that exists somewhere else remotely. then it might have a problem detecting it. But for all other purposes, I think it's pretty good at detecting and analyzing what a payload will do to your computer.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So like in some of my payloads, I will, like have it like go to a GitHub repository and download a file,
Right. Yeah.
and then like unbase 64 it, and then run all the commands. And for something like that, obviously, like you would need something that operated more like a traditional antivirus that goes and hunts down and like analyzes all the things that it's referencing and calling and stuff. So,
Right.
like that would be one way of getting around it, which is really interesting. But cool. So I guess like for me as a security researcher, I often will find something that somebody else wrote that looks really cool, and I might hesitate because they don't have time to sit there and go through all the code to make sure that it's not doing anything suspicious or sketchy. Obviously there's ways of getting around that, but it seems as though this might be a way of maybe taking at least some like ducky script payloads and figuring out if there is something suspicious or weird or something else going around, which kind of implies that for maybe that cool new Python tool that just came out, you could give that a whirl as well and ask a GPT model like if it has any suspicious behaviors or if it does anything that could like lead to a problem in the future, I guess, if it's aware of those sorts of things. Of course, like, so I wanted to mention one of the things that I'm most impressed by about this is the cleanliness of it. Like, I really hate how it always has to like talk to you and like give you like a pep talk and like mention best practices or standards. It won't just give you the code, and sometimes the code's all like broken up and like too like responsive. Like it really can be a little bit annoying to just like copy and paste the code out of this big long response. So the fact you're getting it to do it cleanly is very, very nice. And the other thing is it will often refuse to do anything that could be perceived as malicious. It'll give me a big speech about like morality, and I have to like explain that this is my job. And then like in 4 or 5 exchanges, I have to like explain and defend the purpose of my profession. And if I do a good job, it'll do what I ask. So how did you get around it refusing to do certain tasks or seeing security like doing a security audit as a threat?
Yeah, so what I did, I tinkered around with the prompt engineering for this tool to make it pretty specific. So I made it approach things from a developer point of view rather than a security auditor point of view, because then I think it eliminates a few red flags that GPT might be looking for when it's trying to audit for a script. So I was like, you're a master. I think I put in the prompt engineering that runs in the back end of this code, like you're a master programming like developer who knows all these programming languages. Analyze the payload here, and then put the functionality of the payload alongside a breakdown of the code. So I was really, really specific about the prompt, and I made it so it focused more on the development side of things in order to have it be less, I guess, like if you were to put a really stringent like malware or like a wiper malware in here, I don't think it would work. However, like a general purpose payload, I've tried multiple and it has worked for all of them.
The first thing I'm going to do is, attempt to be like, I want to wipe all my library's computers, like write a payload. Because, it's the whole point of some of these like evil GPTs and other things that have spun up is that they don't have restrictions. Like they don't have the same sorts of like safeguards built in to try to prevent that sort of thing. So it's interesting to see that when you're very specific with prompt engineering, how close can you get to being able to perform like, security tasks that could really go either way. It's a double-edged sword. It's very, very interesting. So a couple questions for the audience. One, what happens when a miss or misinterpretation happens in output? Does that get flagged?
Ooh, I haven't looked into it yet. That's a really interesting point. If a misinterpretation, just thinking of it right off the bat, it might be a little bit tedious to look for misinterpretations in the output because that would be like a manual developer task. But it would be cool, like if I could feed the output back into GPT again and have it analyze its own output and see if it misinterpreted anything. So that's a cool idea. I'll look into it. Like flagging, like maybe I can add a little feature here that like flags an output if it misinterprets anything. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, chaining things together also is really an interesting field of using AI tools where
Mhm.
most of these like AI image generators and other things are actually several AI tools all chained together to create a specific result. And these sorts of
Mhm.
text-based things can be the same. If you're using a development tool and you want it to like, take an input and then create an output and then compare the two with a third party and basically be like, hey, does this look right? Is there any way I could have gotten this wrong? That's an interesting check and balance to prevent the first AI from making mistakes, or at least provide like
Right.
a level of quality control. And you can genuinely make these things better. So the way that I've kind of been thinking about this also, and Angelina, I don't know if you have any like thoughts on this in particular, is like the way that AI was first useful was it could replace like a single person doing a single very specific task. The
Mhm.
way that AI is becoming useful now is you can have a team of AIs replicate a team
Right.
of people that would normally you would need like one or two or three people to bounce off each other or check each other's work or interact to do a specific task. Now you can have these AIs focus very specifically on that task and then pass information between them in a way that like either enriches the data, provides quality control, or like maybe provides another level of analysis. So yeah, very, very interesting to think about the way that these can be chained together. Another question. So is the payload wizard taking the user prompt and adding additional parameters before sending it to the AI for interpretation? And I think that's what you're referring to as prompt engineering.
Yes, yes, yeah. By prompt engineering, I was playing around with the manual hard-coded prompt running in the back end of the tool. So when you pass in a payload here, the payload is like appended to the end of what I manually hard-coded as a prompt and then sent over GPT, and that's what you get as the output.
That's super cool. All right. So one other comment was, without sounding like a generalist and an expert in anything, can we, people/viewers, understanding, get a primer in what a stage loader is? Yeah. So we mentioned that a little bit before, but basically a loader or a stager would be something where I have a piece of code that says, like start up and then go to this website, download something, and then run whatever's at that website. That would be a very primitive stager where like, it starts, it runs, and then it goes and gets further instructions. So the actual stager is very, very small, and it doesn't contain any specific threatening or suspicious instructions. It merely says like, go import this and then execute it, whatever it is. So without then going to this other source and being able to download it, and like hackers will use all sorts of things to obfuscate this. So they'll make it so that only like a certain like code can like unlock it, or like only certain IP addresses can access it, or like if you're running something in a VM, like it won't like properly load. Like there's all sorts of ways to make that payload difficult for somebody to obtain. And that's kind of how a stager works, is it hides the primary payload that does all the malicious stuff in front of behind a very, very generic or like simple loader program, which will go and get the next stage. Would you modify that explanation at all, Angelina?
I think you got it straight to the point. Yeah. So essentially, what a stager is like, usually it's like a one-liner thing inside of a payload like this, where it'll just download a resource on the cloud or host it on GitHub or whatever, and then run it itself. So you have a more condensed payload at the end of the day, where you don't have like a bunch of text. You just have like one text that references an external payload and then downloads it and executes it.
Oh, this is really cool. So speaking of prompt engineering, Trent says that he made a custom cyber mentor GPT that understands that I'm learning and everything I'm doing is in a test environment, and basically like gets rid of that initial conversation that I have to have every time I ask it to do a security task.
Oh,
So,
that's so
I'll
smart.
be like, excuse me, like, I need to find a vulnerability in this. So like, that's not ethical. I'm like, no, I'm a researcher. Like, well, research should be done ethically. I'm like, yes, I know, I'm doing it ethically. I was like, well, is it in a test environment? I'm like, yes, it is. And they're like, okay, fine. But that 5 back and forth exchange, like that wastes time. So that's where prompt engineering comes in, and like basically setting your like having that conversation already in like a prompt that's already there when you start the GPT. This is how people are using like AI Playground and the OpenAI API to make this a very flexible experience for people who are doing certain types of research. So I have to say that as a shout out, like that is a very clever way of doing it. Angelina, are you using AI Playground for the back end of this?
Yes, yeah, that's what I used. Yeah, I don't know if this works for like any other API key, but I think you can generate a free API key here. I paid like a few dollars to get credit to use the API, but I'm pretty sure as long as you have a general OpenAI API key, you can just put it in here and it'll work perfectly.
So for anybody who hasn't used it before, there's kind of two different flavors of Chat GPT that you can experience, or like the various AI models that OpenAI makes available. There's the like GUI version, which I would explain as, like Wireshark. It pops up, it has like, like a GUI. It's a tool you can use. For anybody can use it because it's very interactive. And then there's like the command line version, which is where basically you have an API key, you plug it in, and you can send custom like formatted messages to an AI model that they offer, and you can also set up prompts that run before. So you can like set a context, or you can make it so that it's basically specialized on like a certain piece of information. That's really useful because like theoretically, you could give a bunch of information about a certain task or a certain thing, and then make that AI model knowledgeable about that certain thing, which would be really great for like a specific task where it needs to know about like something you're building or specs that you're going to be asking about. But for a complete beginner, Angelina, can you explain like what AI Playground is like to work with, and what your experience was getting started with it?
Yeah, I think from my experience, it was super intuitive to get started off with. I think they have a lot of documentation and research. So, um, and they have a GUI version of the developer. It looks a little bit different from ChatGPT. I would say it's more customizable, so you can choose like the model and tinker with a lot of things. And I personally prefer it rather than using GPT straight up. And if you want to develop like your own web application like this, I think interfacing with the OpenAI library was super easy. This took me, I think, an hour to make, so it was super easy to build. And I think part of the reason it was pretty simple to build was because they make the documentation super clear on the website, and implementing it is like at most, I think, like 30 lines of code.
Yeah, I just wanted to show off real quick on my screen. I'm gonna
Yeah, you
just pop
can
that up for a
take a
second.
look.
This is AI Playground. I actually haven't used this for a while, so it's like I'm like maybe not the one to be showing off all the features, but like you can see, like Angelina said, this looks different from the normal ChatGPT interface. I can like click on like create plus button to make an assistant, and there's also like a drop down here that allow me to see like chat assistants, which is in beta, and then complete, which I guess is legacy. And you just get more access to stuff. You can like you can do more things here, save assistance, do fine tuning, and export API keys to use in your own code. And as Angelina did, you can then take those API keys, put them in code that runs on a website, and then have like a user put in their own API key. Well, I guess the user would put in their API key, it would run on a website and then return results. I personally do this with some like chat GPT like summarization plugins, where when I watch a YouTube video, if it has a transcript available, it'll actually feed the transcript of the video to chat GPT and summarize the video in the corner with all the main points.
That's
So yeah, there's all sorts of like really smart and interesting ways to use like OpenAI's AI Playground. So I'm glad that some more people are talking about it, because most people's experience with ChatGPT has just been through connecting to the ChatGPT front end or using the app. Which I also have to just mention: have you used the app, like the on the phone based feature, where you basically do like a Skype call with ChatGPT and like ask it stuff and it replies conversationally?
I haven't tried that yet. That sounds really interesting. Have you done that, Cody?
Yeah. So when it first came out, it was interesting to see that it was offering a voice interface, and I thought that it would
Right.
do the voice part on my end and then send the data, but no, like it actually literally does a VoIP call with like a version of ChatGPT running their own like whisper AI. And like I remember, because I was renting a car, and I was like doing the interface to ask a piece of information, and I noticed that the car said I had a call, and it's like, oh my god, have I been on this last call I was on, like talking to this person like while I'm like thinking I'm talking to ChatGPT? That's so embarrassing. So I ended the call, and it hung up, like the OpenAI app just like hung up and like closed out. I was like, wait, so I was right, because you hear the kind of like digital distortion that you hear in a VoIP call, and like it has some of the same like audio artifacts. So it was just interesting to see some of the things that have come out to make this more usable for people, or using technology in ways I didn't expect. Like a Skype call with an AI was not something I expected to be having this year, but that seems to be exactly the way that they're implementing some of the more user-friendly functions. So yeah, all sorts of different ways of interacting with this, all the way from just like calling it on the phone and talking to it in natural language, down to like OpenAI's AI Playground, where you can actually like customize assistants and make, apparently with a good amount of effort, some really cool web-based tools as well. So I also, of course, want to shout out, if people are curious to learn more about this, where would they go, Angelina?
Yeah, so there's a few places you can go. I made a GitHub repository for it, so I'll share my screen and show you guys. So you can visit the website. I was too lazy to buy like a domain name for it, so just like use the Vercel domain name. It's not that hard. So it's like payload-wizard.vercel.app. You can also visit the GitHub repository here. It has the link as well, and I think the code here is relatively straightforward. So if you want to see how I set up like the prompt engineering, the components of this tool, you can just like look through the various pages. Most of the code will be in here, so you can see like the yeah, it was really easy to set up the model using the OpenAI model, and then yeah, the vast majority of the code is within the index.tsx. So if anyone wants to check it out, modify and improve the tool yourself, feel free to reference the GitHub repository.
Yeah, and of course, if anybody wants to support Angelina and also learn a lot more about this, we have a workshop coming up this Saturday, Saturday, January 27th. Yeah, which is really exciting. So this is also an online class. So if you are not in the LA area, usually we do these through Null Space Labs. We love to support them. We love to hang out in the space, but this one's going to be online. So anybody interested in learning about these AI tools, you should definitely check it out. You can find it on the Cyber Weapons Lab meetup. You can also find it on the Null Space Labs meetup page, and you can join from anywhere. So I'm really excited about this class. This is our first class ever that our group has taught about AI and cybersecurity. And I don't see a lot of people really teaching practical uses for this sort of thing. So if you are interested in this, make sure to attend the workshop. If you know anybody who's interested, please share it with them, because it's coming up soon and we'd love to see. And because it's an online class, we can have more people in it, which is really great. Previously, we've been restricted on how many people we can have like physically in Null Space Labs before seating gets, let's say, a little crowded. So it's great to do this online. We've been doing this via Discord the last couple times and had a pretty good experience. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah. And of course, if you want to follow Angelina, what's your website again?
It's my first name, last name.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, TSEBLI. Yeah.
Did I get it? Yes. Okay, cool. So make sure to check that out. You can follow Angelina on all of her various platforms. I have to say, I was telling you the other day, I think you have the most active like LinkedIn presence of like of anyone I know, like under a certain age, I'll say. But yeah, like I see yourself all over LinkedIn. So if you're looking for some good LinkedIn content, I don't think I've said that sentence out loud in a long time. Angelina's stuff is all over LinkedIn, and I highly recommend a follow there. But of course, on Twitter, I will not give that up, YouTube and everything else. And of course, Angelina, you also just came out with another video just last week. Do you wanna shout out what that one was about?
Yeah, so it's about satellite tracking. I noticed that there's not a lot of video tutorials out there showing you how you can perform reconnaissance and OSINT on satellites specifically. So I created a brief overview of various tools you can use like N2IO, GProtect, and so forth in order to track down a specific satellite or group of satellites.
Yeah, so I would say if you're interested in OSINT, I will actually post this in the chat right now, especially when it comes to satellites. That is definitely a video you're going to want to check out, because it goes into a lot of things that I had never heard of. And if I'm curious about a specific satellite, if I want to know if I'm going to be able to see it, if it's going to be overhead, or just more information about it in general, this is the video to watch. Let's see. So James also mentions, and this is in relation to like setting up custom assistants and stuff, it would be cool to have a custom phone number and create a prompt that is preloaded when you call it. So basically it already knows all the information about a specific thing you're going to be calling about, and you want it to be like an assistant, like a voice assistant that's like already set up and like prepared for a certain task, or maybe even like is paired with a second assistant to like execute on tasks, and then the first one checks its work or something, something like that. That would be really cool. The voice interface gives you the ability to have a really like personal, like a conversation. Although I found that I just read so much faster that I'm just like, speed it up, buddy. Let's go. Come on. So yeah, like I think like the AI voice assistant is really cool. For some people, it's the best way to communicate with it, especially for me if I'm driving. Where I live, it's legal to be on the phone and drive, so I can just be calling an AI and like having it give me directions or like telling me facts about the world if I really want to. And it might actually be the best way of doing it in certain circumstances. Right, here's a comment. The satellite stuff is extremely interesting to me. I just ordered an antenna for my RTL SDR to start doing more satellite stuff. Angelina, would you recommend the RTL SDR as a good beginner kit?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's great, especially if you're starting out with like generic satellites, like weather satellites are pretty good with the RTL SDR. And I think it's a great, cheap option to get started with satellite reconnaissance.
Do you remember like how the RTL SDR like first came into being?
I think
Like
you
what it
told
was
me
for
this
originally?
before. I forgot.
I think it's so funny. Yeah, it was like, according to what I know, and I know hackers love this thing, so if I'm wrong on anything, I'm so sorry. But like, I believe this used to be like a TV decoder, like in like Eastern Europe, that was mass produced, and people just figured out that it was particularly good at like reading all types of frequencies, not just the one that it was like made for. So as a result, the design was copied a lot and became extremely popular. But it started out its life as like a TV tuner in like Eastern Europe or something like that. TV tuner, yeah, okay, cool. James Randolph confirms to me that that I was not wrong. So one comment, I'm surprised the entry back to Earth occurred so fast. I'm glad the educational content on this channel is awesome. In reference to your video, I believe. And then another question about what kind of antenna did Trent get. I'm also interested to see that. So James's comment about the phone made me think of something, and let me see if I can find it. So okay, I did find it. Let me share my screen again. So during Chaos Communication Congress, we had a new friend named Lena pick up one of our nuggets and start getting really interested in hacking it and playing with it. And our friend Arya sent this to me last night. This is calling a DECT phone from a nugget. So the nugget is making a connection, and it's actually initiating like a DECT phone call to this. And the idea is that if someone is at their door, they can use the nugget to initiate a phone call that basically like contacts them. So this was really cool. Like, I'd never seen somebody using like a nugget to make a DECT phone call before. One of my favorite things I saw this week, of all the nugget shenanigans I've seen, this is also done with CircuitPython. And my impression was that Lena had to do a good amount of work to get CircuitPython to like work properly, because there's it's volunteer. It's volunteers that put it together. There's sometimes a couple bugs, little mistakes that maybe have made it through and nobody's noticed yet. So it's really cool to see CircuitPython being used for this kind of creative project. And of course, like, it's been nuggets all the way down this week. Super cool to see all these new things coming out for this platform that we've been working on for a while now. So yeah, super cool. I will have to touch base with this more because I'm intrigued by this. I know James wants to explore whether or not you can do this as well. So I will see if maybe I can get Lane on the stream to talk about the various things you can do with CircuitPython and a nugget once you really start being willing to, I guess, like fix some of the bugs in some of these libraries. One other thing I've been working on is we did our hex leaf workshop at C3, but I've also been wanting to upgrade the lightbox workshop I've done in the past, and I have made this new diffuser. It's so bright you can barely actually see it, but yeah, the diffuser goes on top of an 8x8 grid and makes it really bright and really pretty. So I thought that my workshop the last time I did it was maybe not as bright as it could have been. So this is a little upgrade where we're going to be using, you can kind of see it like that, a 8x8 grid to create these kind of like waterfall patterns, and basically teach some classes at the Missoula Makerspace. It's so bright. At the Missoula Makerspace on how to create your own light box that does not need to be this bright, but certainly could if you want it to be. So that's the other thing I've been working on this week, is some more like beautiful light box and light projects. I still have pieces from that like light box workshop and the Nanoleaf workshop strewn everywhere because we printed so many of them. But yeah, looking at a couple upgrades to that for upcoming classes. Maybe this is dim enough. Oh yeah, you can kind of, that's a little bit better. Is something I've been working on this week too. Let's see, did we find out what type of antenna Trent is getting? No, we haven't yet. But so far the guess is an Ant 500. Do you know that particular antenna?
I haven't looked into it specifically.
Yeah, me neither. All right, so I think that is most of the time we have today. If anybody has any additional questions on, oh my gosh, there's so many things we could answer on using AI for cybersecurity, on using aerospace on using OSINT in aerospace, and then also, I guess, like any of this nugget related stuff, feel free to ask. But other than that, Angelina, thank you for coming back on the stream. It's always fun to have you on, especially when you have a class like coming up immediately after, because I feel like a lot of people, they get excited about learning, like AI for cybersecurity, or maybe just learning about AI programming as a beginner and want to take the next step in using it in their own work.
Yeah, of course. I feel like this workshop can apply to anyone who's in cybersecurity because we're seeing really the prevalence of AI taking over. So I'm really interested in seeing how it goes. And yeah, if you're interested, just feel free to head to the meetup page and sign up. And thank you so much again, Kody, for having me on.
Yeah, and before I forget, did you want to mention the talk acceptance that you got?
Oh yeah, so I recently got an acceptance to talk at Hack SpaceCon, which is a space-focused cybersecurity conference in Florida in the Kennedy Space Center. So if you are going to be at the conference, I'll be presenting there. I'll be focusing specifically on signals intelligence on satellite systems. So I'm very excited to be presenting there this year.
So cool. Well, congratulations again on that. That's so cool. I love seeing that you are getting picked up at conferences and like people want to hear what you have to say. And I was mentioning one of our friends who works at NASA actually got an email at his work inviting him to go to one of your events. So if that's not an endorsement, I don't know what is. So thank you to everybody in the stream today. Thanks for Angelina coming back on the stream. And of course, as always, thank you to Varonis for letting me do this stream every week, letting me highlight people like Angelina. If you guys enjoy the stream, if you're watching it on repeat and you want to support us, then you can go to varonis.com/Kody. That's Kody. And they do check to see how many people go to that link, and it lets them know that you appreciate the stream and that we should keep doing it. So that's all we have for this Wednesday. I will be back on Friday talking about the cyber news, maybe with Killian. Maybe Killian will come back. That'd be great. Varonis just had a big old event on the East Coast that I didn't go to because I was still decompressing, and also it was I think impossible to fly out of where I am. But now that he's back, we should have him on the stream talking about all the cyber news starting this Friday. So we will see you all then, and goodbye everyone.
Have a great rest of your day. Bye.